it's because we feel that people haven't understood that there's actually a spiritual connection and all the things that are happening in terms of the world around us in nature and the environment. And so we're again reminding people that we're responsible to see, and we've made things happen the way they are. But once we understand that, it's not a pessimistic approach at all, but we then know what it is we have to do and how we can make a difference to what's going on here in the world. And so this is why we're here in Doha now.
And do you feel by your presence, can you influence the negotiations? Can you, let the people who are in power know what you think? What sort of lines of communication do you have?
Probably it won't impact the people who are around the negotiating table. I used to be very naive and think that it was possible to do that. And over the years now I feel that they're so restricted by their governments, and their governments are restricted by the elections, and people are just not ready to make a shift and make a change. And so this is why, in Rio this year, what struck me very strongly was when they had the major groups do their presentations to the governments. The guy who was heading up the NGO delegation, civil society, he said, but you even put that civil society is part of your agreement for this document. I want you to remove that because you haven't asked civil society and we don't agree with things you're saying. And the scientist, the scientist bloc is a huge one, and they're very powerful individuals and a powerful group. But the Japanese scientist said, very calm, very peaceful. The scientists have been telling governments for years that we're heading towards a major crisis, but governments and people haven't listened to us. And now we have to tell you, we are nearly at the point where things are irreversible. And so we don't have much more time to make changes happen. So now I don't think the negotiators are going to listen, but I do think that civil society is interested because they've been hit by climate change in many, many different parts of the world. I didn't know that people in England were going to die from flooding. And the news yesterday was that 2 people have died in the floods that have come to England now, right now. It's happening at this moment. We're used to flooding in Bangladesh, but in England, and it's happening. So we are seeing the evidence of climate change everywhere. And people are understanding things are getting worse and worse and worse. And I think civil society is now saying, we want to make sure that there is a difference, and the way things can change is by changing our thoughts, our attitude, our consciousness, and returning to a lifestyle of simplicity, using our understanding of the deep values of respecting the environment, respecting the world around us. And so my hope and why we're here is to make sure that civil society don't get to a state of hopelessness and despair, but they know that there is hope, that there is a future, and we can have an impact in the way things are moving.
As you say, there is hope, and I guess there is movement. But you also said that time is running out. How would you explain the lack of movement, given these dire scientific warnings we have had over the years? How would you explain people's unwillingness to perhaps just hear what's going on, hear the dangers?
I think it's because they understand that once I accept what I'm hearing, then there has to be implementation of that. And that involves a change of lifestyle. And not many people are willing to do that. Individuals find it quite difficult to contemplate, to think about changing their lifestyle. People in government know that if they impose restrictions, then there's a question mark about whether they're going to get their votes at the next election. And so there's a general resistance. But in a paper I was reading yesterday, coming across here, and it's a British paper, and this term was being used that it's conscious suicide that we're heading for. And that sounds too dramatic maybe, but yet I feel that it is very, very dramatic, and there really has to be a deep internal change of awareness and a change of lifestyle.
And I guess finally, give me an idea about how we can achieve that, because we live in a, perhaps not here in Qatar, but in the West, we live in a society which increasingly people don't go to church, they don't particularly follow any particular religion. Faith is not necessarily a major part of their lives. They're probably more concerned about what happens at Downton Abbey on a Sunday. So give me an idea about how you can perhaps communicate what you're talking about to an audience that might just not be that interested.
I think that the situation with Hurricane Sandy, that hit things home in New York and on the East Coast in a strong way. The floods in England, for example, again, you're making people ask the question, what's going on? And so as more people start connecting climate change with the reality of destruction in an external physical sense, then they're going to say, well, what's the answer? Yes, the answer is that we simplify our needs. But I also see that when they see that it's a huge financial loss, climate change isn't just a spiritual, ethical thing, but it's actually hitting their pockets. And then they're going to say, okay, well, what's the answer? What can we do? And maybe one thing is to change to a vegetarian lifestyle. And I know that that might be asking a lot of people, but maybe they begin with saying, okay, one day a week, let me be vegetarian. And I think that they might begin to enjoy a vegetarian diet and feel a lot healthier through that. And so maybe that's something. Maybe they can say that when I go to work, let me go by bus or by train, public transport, rather than take my own car in. These things are not big things. If you put it into the context of what's happening through climate change, and then you say, well, are there little things that we can do? And I think one day vegetarian a week, going to work by public transport, these are not big things to ask of people. But when these little things multiply in a major way, and from 1 to 10 to 100, and it becomes fashionable, not just to talk green or to advertise in a green way, but actually to do something that can help the environment, I think people will feel that, well, these are not little things. We can do all of this. It's not a big deal.